Hi, it's Sherry Kalergis with At 45, the magazine for women who are 45 plus when life changes. And today we are continuing on with our Women in Art series with Rome Gallery. And I'm so excited to have with us Vancouver artist Tamara Spence, who does mixed media. And I'm so excited to welcome her and dive into mixed media because it's one thing I know nothing about. So welcome, Tamara.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. So first of all, can you tell me what mixed media actually is?
Sure. When I described when I got onto the website at Rome Gallery, I didn't know how to sort of describe what I do because I do a lot of different things and I'm still not done because I'm still very process-driven artist. And the thing that makes me tick is that I like to change what I'm doing. I don't necessarily do one thing. Obviously, I don't do one thing. So when I first started, I started with ink drawings and they're black and white because I was too scared to put sort of color on the page. I have a very strong inner critic that's I have to constantly battle. So I went from that to trying some watercolor and adding that to the paper. So I draw an ink drawing and then I'd add the watercolors. And then I moved on to acrylics. And so I did that for about 2 or 3 years and continued to do it on and off. And then I moved to doing, behind me is sort of more of a mixed media, which you're asking about. And it's a collage, so I've done acrylic with the black design, and then I've used recycled cardboard in different colors to give it lots of texture and feel to it. So it's different. And I also work in clay and cardboard and sculpture. So when I'm describing mixed media, it's probably not your classic mixed media where people put different things onto the board and then paint it on and then color. And so the classic mixed media artist, I would say, uses one canvas and then puts that on there. And would consider myself more of a mixed media artist in the fact that I constantly try new things and that I get easily bored.
Well, I love that piece.
That is really what the battle is, that I get easily bored because I am so process driven. And I haven't really realized that that really drives me. This has been during this time of COVID, I've really learned that. And sometimes it takes a long time to learn about ourselves as we, as we
Well,
find.
don't you think that's one thing that's great about COVID? Because I think the thing that happened, before COVID is we were all so busy, and COVID gave us a reason to stop and start to pay a little more attention to ourselves. So I know exactly what you mean.
Life was definitely interrupted.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I was fascinated to read when I was looking at some of your pieces is you have a number of pieces that are acrylic and gold leaf. So I was curious, like, how does the gold leaf, like, how do you work with it and get it onto the piece?
Sure. So normally, well, at the moment, because it may change, I paint an acrylic painting, and then if I think it needs something where I'm thinking of the gold leaf in mind, then I will add it after the acrylic is on. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. That's just my process at the moment, which is ever changing. So then you let the whole thing dry, and then there's a specific glue that you need to use for putting gold leaf on. I use imitation gold leaf because gold leaf is very expensive. So I
I
haven't
imagine.
buying real gold leaf yet. Not sure if I ever will, but who knows. So then you put the special glue or size onto the board and you let that dry, and then you take your little leafy, so it's very fragile leaf of gold, and you lay it on, and then some people rub it off. You can do really any way you want, but I use a brush, and I grind it off sort of the spot where there's no glue. So then
Mm.
it will stick where the glue is or the size, and then the rest of it starts coming off in pieces, and then there's a little gold leaf everywhere. So
Oh, that's amazing.
it can be messy.
And then the other thing that I had no idea what it was cradle board
Oh, the cradle board.
or
So
cradle board. Okay.
it's how to describe it? It's just a fancy name for a wooden canvas.
Ah,
Behind me, this is a cradle board. So it's made of wood. So instead of a canvas, the whole thing is entirely wood, and then you work on top of the cradle board.
oh, wow, that is
Cardboard
fascinating.
and yeah. So then that's what makes this uh, the ability to glue all these different pieces of cardboard in different sizes and everything like that. So I can paint on it, and then I can also glue a structure onto it.
Oh,
A lot of
wow.
artists, a lot of artists use cradle board. It's more expensive, obviously, because it's wooden and not canvas, but it gives you a really firm surface to work on.
Oh, well, thank you for those explanations. So how did you get it started in art?
I've always been very creative. My father was a sculptor, and he had a workshop at home. And then when we moved to Salt Spring, he had a studio as well. And he was a professor of sculpture. So I used to, when I was a little girl, I used to go up and uh, play in the studio after school because my dad was watching me, sort of, while I'm playing in the studio, basically playing in the studio or creating in his classroom, which was a large studio, and I really enjoyed that. I was also very physical. I'm very athletic and sports driven, so I really loved volleyball. And when I left, I did art all through high school. And then when I went to university, I sort of majored in volleyball. So I played varsity and went on from there. And then I was struggling with sort of what to study. And my mom suggested sciences or sports science. And I studied that for a while, but it wasn't quite right. And then I was still struggling with what I wanted to do. So then I went into nursing. My mom was a nurse. So I went into nursing and continued to play lots of volleyball. And I met my husband just before my dad died. He died in 1999.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
sorry.
yeah. And then I was a nurse for 15 years. And after he died, I went and I did a year of fine arts where he taught. Um, it was the right place for me, but the wrong time. So the grief was too much for me. So after that, I went back to nursing, and we had 2 children. And life kind of kept rolling on, and I kept working in because it's good pay, and you got to support your family. And we got into coaching volleyball. My husband got me into that. So our life was very much coaching, playing, taking care of the kids. And then I had a back injury at work, and I had some herniated discs. So then I was advised not to work on the wards anymore. And I was really struggling with my grief and my depression, a lot of issues. I'm battling with WorkSafe BC as far as how I was going to be retrained and things like that. So that was a long journey through that. And then obviously in the back of my mind always was, well, you're a creator. And I have a very strong inner critic. And for many years, I would create and just not share with anybody, or I would create and then give it away as a gift. So I would never admit to being an artist. I felt that I wasn't. I thought I was not good enough on the inside. And it went on and on and on, and I was getting sadder and sadder, just not living my true identity. And then finally I decided I would try hypnosis. And I went to a hypnotherapist, a wonderful lady, Camilla Zhang, here in Vancouver. So I went to her, and I had a few treatments with her, and I was lying there, and I was like, there was a lot of different things that happened. A lot of grief, a lot of letting go. And when I left, I'm like, well, I don't feel any different, or I was like, well, that was hours of crying. Why did because I would cry when I was under hypnosis, and it was just interesting that soon after that I was able to start. That was then that point that I really started to draw a lot, and I started with the black and white, like I told you earlier, just simple black and white. Too scared to put color on the page because I was worried that that inner voice. I always hear this inner voice that when I was growing up. Oh, it's not good enough, or that's not right, and I would erase things and move on. But now I was more willing to just let it happen. And after I would make a line, it wouldn't immediately look wrong to me or things like that. So then I did some drawings, and I was posting them in Ellen Bradley Chung, who also a member of Rome Gallery, and a former co-worker. She's another nurse who's now an artist and has found herself through more artistic means. She invited me to join Rome Gallery for a Canuck and I show. And that's when I met Jen. And that was my first show. And I think I put 3 drawings into that. And then after that, it just became easier to create and to push through that voice that I wasn't good enough, and that I needed to believe in myself. Yeah, so, and then as far as how I keep moving from thing to thing, I think that I've just really discovered that I am process driven, and that what I need to do is to keep changing things and
Right.
in order to, yeah, in order to be happy.
And we all need to be happy. So, I mean, I really appreciate that you shared your journey. And I have a couple questions. First of all, you were mentioning under hypnosis that you were, crying a lot. And I've actually done that process too. So I'm curious if you think that 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 emotion that you were expressing release something that you went to, that art became an option for you? Or do you think that it was actually bringing up the fact that you needed the art to be happy? Like I'm just curious about how that
Really
made
tough
art
question.
possible.
It's a tough question because so many things are wrapped up. Like, I know I'm an artist on the inside, but I was too scared to share
Right.
that.
So that's powerful. So art really is something rewarding. It's brought huge value it's allowed you to be who you are.
Yes.
And what do you enjoy the most about the process of being an artist? And what do you what process do you use when you start to create a piece?
Sure. When I'm starting my process, having a good cry here.
Okay, that just I mean, it just speaks to the power of what makes us feel, right? And art seems to be a really big uh, release.
It's
I've talked to now, I think, 6 women, And each of those has shared the fact that doing the art makes them complete. It adds a component to who they are that allows them to express their emotions. So definitely that's a powerful tool.
Yes. For me, art is healing. It really heals my soul.
Yeah. So when you're creating a piece, does it just sort of, do you think, oh, I'm going to start with a painting, or do you think I'm going to start with
I would say yes.
idea?
Um, how does it start? Yeah, I think it's comes with the decision. Oh, today I'm going to do this painting, and sometimes it happens because I'll start and I'll just keep going, and other times it won't. And it's for me. I need a flow state, and I think all that inner critic was really interrupting that flow state.
Right.
And the flow state I can sort of equate to as also being an athlete. There's a feeling you get when you're playing a sport or you're doing your art where you just get lost in the moment, and there isn't actually a lot of thinking going on. You're just you're either painting or you're moving, and it's almost like you've left your body for a little while and you're just lost in that moment. And I would call that, for me, as a flow state. I'm just being, and the head is turned off.
Right.
And
I've heard that. I've heard that shared often. It's almost like you hit your sweet spot. You know, athletes have that sweet spot where the action of what they're doing is becomes automatic. It takes no thought.
yeah, it's like a point in your stimulation where you're just right. And yeah.
So interesting about the self-critic, because we all have it, but artists, I think, have it even more so. And what I always am curious about is, how do you know when a piece is finished? Like, how does it, like, because I hear often artists, they just keep going back and changing it, and it's at some point you must get a feeling that this is done, or this is it, or I can move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the piece that I'm working on. Something like this is kind of definitive because of the process. It's like I'm putting on pieces, and it's complete when I put all the color pieces on. So that's that way. But if you're painting with acrylic or oil or anything like that, how do you stop, right? Um, That's a great question, because sometimes I think I stop before I've done enough. And sometimes I've done too much and I don't like what I've done anymore. So it's like, oh, I wish I had stopped. And then there's other times I look at other paintings that I've done and I'm like, oh, well, why didn't I keep going? So sometimes as an artist, I'll throw it out there to the world of Instagram. Does this look done?
And social media.
And yeah, and sometimes yes, but most times it's an inner feeling that um, I think it's time to stop. I think I'm going to ruin this. I think that's my thought pattern. I think if I keep going, I'm going to ruin the painting. I don't think that's everybody's thought.
Right.
I think there's definitely artists out there who don't have that inner critic who's like sitting on their shoulder saying, "Oh, that's bad," or anything like that. Like, so yeah, I think sometimes you do know, and sometimes you don't, and I can't really tell you which one is gonna be today.
So, from the beginning of the painting journey to where you are now, has that process helped reduce that inner critic, like as you're blossoming as an artist? Is that becoming less?
I think it is becoming less, but I've also become better at managing it. during COVID, I also coach in a volleyball academy.
Mm-hmm.
It was not during the first part of the year, it was during the second part of the year. So I had to go and coach every day, and that was hitting my sweet spot. And I was not very happy because I wasn't, I have a hard time delegating time to myself and creating boundaries around how much time I need. So when I had to go and coach, then it would hit the time that I normally paint or create, and I wouldn't carve out the time that I needed because I was so busy with the other tasks in my life that I would become more and more upset. And I find the longer I leave being creative and setting up time for myself, the harder it is to create that time again. So it's almost like this terrible loop that if I don't keep that flow going, then it's kind of like turning a tap. It'll slowly close it down. So I know that the secret to success that is that I have to keep creating, but there's this constant pull between what else is in my life and what else needs to be done. And I'm probably making not the bad choice, a different choice than what I should be making to what I should be doing my artwork for everybody's sake in the household to make me happy so that I'm not grumpy or hard to get along with or making myself happy. I have a hard time cutting time out for myself.
And you're not the first woman I've heard that from. I wonder why. It's so interesting because most women, and I think like when I say most, it's like almost 100%. Most women have a hard time giving themselves permission to have that time in their life, and we need it so badly, don't you think?
Yes.
Yeah, it's really sad, and the one thing that I feel optimistic about is I see like that probably it's probably a result of our upbringing, but also I see that the next generation of women are much better at it. When I look at my daughter, she has a much better grounded system of making time for herself and not feeling that guilt about 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 making the time. It's like almost it's almost slotted into her day of making that time, and it's sad that our generation of women sort of miss that.
Yeah, I've always felt a strong need to please, and that's been a big struggle.
Yeah, and that's me too. And yeah, that need to please, uh, it can be a huge barrier. But I think the great thing is as we grow older, we sort of not just give ourselves permission, but we actually take action to do that. I always share this story. Well, probably almost 8 years ago, maybe 10, I decided I was going to quit cooking. And for many years, I did not cook during the week. I only cooked on the weekends. And oh, the pushback I got about that. But it was the beginning of me having that time, because otherwise I had done a study and it was something like I was spending more time in my kitchen dealing with food matters than I did at my day job. So it was like I was doing my day job and a full-time job of cooking and taking care of meals.
Yeah.
So how can we find time for ourselves if we're setting up our life for that? It just doesn't work,
It's
does
a
it?
constant battle. I totally agree.
Yeah. So is there a key piece of wisdom that you'd like to share with women who, are either thinking that they need to make more time in their life or are sort of starting to explore that?
Sure. I think for me personally, I've always had a hard time believing in myself, mostly in art. As an athlete, I was very confident, but as an artist, I was not, probably because there was so much tied to it, and I was so scared of being a failure. I think not to be scared, not to worry about failure, because failure is just going to lead to learning. And you really need to push through to try and figure out what makes you happy. Some people have it easier than others, as far as like knowing when they're younger what they want. Like my husband, like is a police officer, and he knew that he wanted to be a police officer when he was a little boy. But his route to that was long and convoluted. But his need to be, he enjoys helping people. So when you're tied, what your happiness is tied to, the type of person you are. So his bucket is filled by helping, and being there for people. So it didn't matter what job he was doing, because he was always helping, and he would always fill his bucket by either helping people or connecting. And I think for creatives, it's a little harder to figure that out, especially if you're lacking that either motivation or belief that you can do it. I think we'll sidestep it for a long time until it, starts slapping you in the face that, yeah, you need to do this or you're not going to be happy.
So art is what you're filling your bucket with. That is really your sweet spot.
Creativity, yes.
Creativity, yeah, very important. So what is a key piece of learning that has helped you through the difficulty of getting back to art or getting into art?
Sure. So for me, I have a counselor, and I see her, and she's been great about teaching me or pushing me very gently to do things for myself. And I think the big thing was that if I'm not happy, then everybody else is miserable. Well, not miserable, but if I'm happy, then things will go more smoothly.
Right.
And in order to be happy, I have to accept myself and accept what I want to do and pursue the things that I want.
There's a huge stigma again around getting counseling and that, and I'm a huge believer in acquiring expertise, because if you have a physical ailment, the first thing you do is go to a doctor, and yet when we have a spiritual or mental ailment, it's the last thing we do, and it's really critical that we get assistance, because trying to solve those kinds of things are so difficult on our own.
Yes.
So very brave of you to A, share that, but B, to actually take the step to do it, because I think a lot of women don't. So can you just share, if women are struggling with that, can you share why or the benefits of doing that and how it's helped you?
Why I chose to go to counseling?
Yeah.
Well, after my back injury, some severe depression and anxiety and all those things, and I was suicidal, and I needed help. So I took medication. I took antidepressants for several times in my lifetime, postpartum depression, and then the depression from the back injury, and working through changing my career from nurse to artist. And the medications definitely helped. So if you need medications, take them. And you don't have to stay on them forever. And some people do, but most people don't. And the counselor, I started with I started with EFAP for the Employee Family Assistance Program, and through them, my counselor set me up because I had lost some hearing earlier in my life, and my counselor set me up with the Deaf and Wellbeing Program in Vancouver. So that's out there for people who are deaf or have loss of hearing. So I got set up through that, and I actually took a depression course, a CBT, or cognitive behavior therapy course. And I took that for about 9 months. And that was very interesting to take that with a number of deaf people and people with hard hearing. So there was a counselor there, and that person, and a psychiatrist. And it was taught with, they spoke and did sign language. It was very interesting. And profoundly helpful. And then after that, I didn't go for a while, and then I was still struggling to be authentic and true to the artist. I was in so much turmoil inside. And then I did the hypnotherapy, and that really helped. But as far as learning to, my counselor now helps me with staying true to allowing myself time to be me, and not to belittle myself, and not to put everybody else first.
Wow.
So, the tendency is to put, I think for a lot of women, and I'm not going to say most, but a lot of women put others first.
Yeah.
The major caregiver.
No, that's true.
In some families. And yeah, so for me, it's been a very important part of my recovery and my growth, because I don't consider it done. I'm always going to be changing, and I'm always going to need help. But my toolbox of helping myself is getting bigger. But it's nice to have that carpenter as my counselor, and she can, she can say, you need to do this, or you need to do that, or it sounds like, because I'll bounce things off. I'll talk about things that are going on, and then she'll be like, well, it sounds like you're not doing enough for yourself. And then, so she calls me on my shit when I don't do what I'm supposed to be doing, or don't do what will make me happier. So it's great.
Well, that's a very empowering, sharing. I love that. Particularly interesting about the hard of hearing, because I don't share this with a lot of people, but I lost like 90% of hearing in 1 second in one ear, and a week later I lost 30% in the other ear. So I in all the doctors and things, I've never heard of that organization or even that service. So that's particularly interesting to me.
Vancouver Coastal, definite, and well-being.
Amazing.
The link.
Thank you. Please do. And I'll share it out because, when things like that happen to you, um, you're so focused on if you can find a solution that you forget to search out the support. And actually, I remember when, I kept trying all these things, like I went to hyperbaric chamber therapy and all these things. And I remember when I finally got to the end of it, and they told me I have a 50% chance of getting my hearing back in over 2-year period of time. And so far, nothing's happened. But I remember him telling me, this may be your reality. You just got to get used to it. But he never said, check and see if you can get some support to help you. I mean, so that's really something.
I think our medical personnel are catching up on that, and I think society needs to realize that there's always an emotional effect to the physical challenge.
Yeah. Well, it's been a marvelous talking to you, Tamara. I mean, I think that we've covered so much more ground than just being an artist, right? And I think that's the beauty of talking about things that make us whole, whether it's art or music or, you know, sports, is that it is that additional avenue to connect with ourselves and an ability to share ourselves out and to pay attention and make space for ourselves. So, I mean, two of the most important things you've shared today is, you know, if you have a problem, to be looking for help, and there's no shame in doing that. And you've shared your story so succinctly. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So, if people want to look at your art or buy your art, of course they can go to Rome Gallery, but do you also have a website?
Sure, it's tamaraspencefineart.com.
Okay, and you're also on social media?
Yes. I'm on Instagram at Tamara Spence Art, and Facebook similar. Tamara
Okay,
Spence Art.
super. Well, thanks again for sharing. And if you send me those links, we'll definitely put it into the YouTubes and articles.
Awesome. Thank you.